Last weekend, I participated in the GMTK 2024 Game Jam, and let me tell you, I think it was my best game jam yet. This year, the theme was built to scale, and it was a theme that I was hesitant at first to come up with a decent idea with, but after day one, I threw out all of my work, pivoted, and came up with Bounce to Scale, which ends up being a really fun little incremental mining game where you have to break these blocks and collect money, and slowly over time, you scale up these numbers really, really quickly. And I think one of the reasons that this game jam ended up being one of my favorite game jams of all time, it probably will go down maybe, is because it was a 96-hour game jam, which meant for me, I had 4 days to work on it. Typically, the GMTK game jam is only 48 hours, and I feel like I have always this like time pressure in the back of my head, and it creates this really stressful situation that kind of burns me out. Now, 4 days of making a game really quickly is still something that kind of burned me out a bit, but I think at no point during this game jam did I feel super stressed out for time. And so for that, thank you, Mark, for expanding it. I think 4 days is about the max I could do. Maybe like a 3-day game jam would be perfect for me, because toward the end I was kind of ready to be done. But with a 48-hour game jam, I think there's not enough time to really pivot and let your idea breathe and find the fun parts of the game. I think the other big thing that I did really well here was followed my own advice of trying to do one thing really simply. The very first day of the game jam, I actually ended up trying to come up with a different idea. And I came up with an idea for a little bit of a startup company where you would be somebody to have to manage a startup company and try to scale it bigger and bigger and bigger. And the initial idea was going to be working with something kind of like the visual shader editor. How do I show that for you really quickly here? Here we go. The visual shader elements here. So where you would have like these different nodes, you have to input them. So maybe this is the bank node and you have to pay for one of your employees. Maybe you have a manager node here. You would then have this worker here, the float OP is going to be a worker, and they'd have to go and start working and trying to help a customer get to from a prospecting phase. And maybe you have a specific worker who could be a sales rep and an onboarding manager, and then you have developers, and bugs would pop up, and you'd have to manage your bank account and who you're paying, when you're paying them, keeping your workers happy. And I left the stream kind of getting to the point where, one, this would be maybe a good idea, and I'll probably put it in my little notebook of ideas, but two, I don't think this game was going to be fun in 5 minutes. So I ended the stream early on Friday. Ended up being a great Twitch stream, had about 90 people watching the whole time. They saw me pivot. They saw me work through my game design document for this and come up with all the different things we could add. But this idea I left with being like, I don't think I can execute this in a fun vision that would be a good game jam entry with 96 hours and the idea of trying to get it so people could play the game in 5 minutes. So I woke up Saturday morning and I decided to not code right away, but try to figure out how to find the fun. And earlier this year, I actually went through and created a pretty decent prototype for a mining and crafting game here, where you can go through and actually mine out blocks. And during that time, we explored a lot of different ways to do mining in a game. And so I was like, you know what? This was really fun. What if we turn this into a game where you scaled up the numbers and made it a little bit more of an incremental game? And if you saw the beginning of the video here, you can kind of see where some of my ideas came from. So the great thing about doing this and having done a mining type game before is the uncertainty of what the code would need to be lowered itself quite a bit. And as I started working on Bounce to Scale here, there's a lot of things that I was able to run really quickly to get to. And so by the end of the second day, I had a full working prototype, which then let me be like in this state where I could say, hey, let me see what I can do with the last 48 hours as far as polishing the game. One of my tips for everybody is to try to do one thing really well. And for this game, I was easily able to identify what that one thing is: bouncing on a block and breaking it to earn money. That's it. How can I make that feel really good? There's a slight bit of, there's some particles that pop out. There's some bounce and stretch there. Those were all things I started working on in day 3 and day 4. I distinctively tried not to do scope creep. So in day 3, I came to stream and I said, hey, today's just going to be polishing. We have a working prototype from day 2. I guess day 1 was a big wash, but day 3, we're going to go ahead and start just working on getting the game in a state that is even a little bit more playable. So at the end of day 3, we were sitting pretty good there. And then day 4 rolled around, and I decided to start scope creeping a bit and added in these diamonds so that there would be just a tinge more interest to the bouncing mechanic, and maybe you'd have to like actually go through and aim yourself. Now, one of the hardest parts about doing any game jam entry is going to be balancing the game. And so with this game, I decided to use a spreadsheet, and then there's an extension you can add for Google Sheets here, which allows you to export the data into a JSON format. So I was able to really easily come into this upgrade sheet, define my new upgrade, and give myself tiers, and then use this spreadsheet, use what spreadsheets can do really well, which is to do some simple formulas to scale numbers up really big. And this allowed me to really quickly and iteratively, especially on day 4, get the polish of the game into a state where the balance curve felt good enough. And one of the really nice things about this being a game jam game again is that it's 5 minutes. So as long as the first minute or two feel slow enough and feel incremental enough, if the numbers scale out of control, which they absolutely do in this game, it's okay. It's okay that the curve kind of scales really hard, because again, the whole theme of this game is built to scale. So if my numbers scale ridiculously fast and it starts slow and then it just incrementally expands really far, that's okay in my book. And I think that's something that's been really nice, especially if I've played some of the games in this game jam entry. Balancing a game for 5 minutes and making it just hard enough or just fun enough for that amount of time has always been a hard struggle, and it's especially true for a 5-minute game jam entry. They don't have to be 5 minutes. I'm just thinking that's from like a perspective of someone who's rated a bunch of games. I'm not a big fan of games that take 10, 20, 30 minutes to play. If you can make a game that hooks me in for that amount of time, that's incredible. But my goal for each rater would be to, at most, play it for 5 minutes and see what's going on. So ultimately speaking, I think the incremental vibe here was great. I hit it on the head. I'm very proud of this entry. I had a lot of fun making it. I could see myself taking an idea like this and bringing it to Steam as a small incremental game. Probably not in the same vein as this bouncing downward effect. Probably a bit closer to the mining and crafting game here, where you're going to be maybe going into this cave, maybe we strip away gravity or something like that, and you have to like slowly mine your way out of a cave. I think this looks a little bit better and a little bit more fun, where the bouncing one is a fun and a niche thing for a game jam entry, but eventually becomes a bit cumbersome. Again, you can go play it down below. If you enjoyed the game jam, stick with it. If you failed and you didn't get it fully completed, that's okay. Try to learn something from the mistakes you made. Maybe you overscoped it. Maybe you burnt yourself out day 1 and didn't take the time to design something right, or didn't take the time to, take a break and play video games Friday night and chill out and have your weekend still. Think about what you did well, think about what you did wrong, and think about how you could do better in the next time. But more than anything, stick with it. Game development is a hard thing to do. It's taken me 4 years to get to the point where I feel comfortable with Godot. I feel like I can come up with decent ideas that make the games really fun to play, and I think Bounce to Scale is just that. If you are curious and you want to help support me a bit more, go check out my upcoming game, Hexagod. It is currently in the demo phase, and it is super fun. It's just as satisfying as Bounce to Scale looked in this video, and I'm incredibly proud of this game. It is going to be my next commercial game, and I'd love if you could play it. My name's been Aarimous. Good luck out there. You're better at this than you think. I'll see you around. Bye-bye.